I'm in school. You're probably in school. School is life. As a titular nerd in 12th grade, I took AP Lit in order to satisfy my parents' whims of becoming a brain surgeon. And in AP Lit, there's reading. Oh my god, I didn't know that. And it was in this year that I read Wuthering Heights. Good ol' Weather. Wuthering Heights is a novel by Emily Bronte, and it's basically a story that's meant to be a coping mechanism for the author's isolation and hatred for religion and her family. And can I just say, when I read this book, I hated it. Like, I despised this shit with a passion. I couldn't stand the 19th century English. I hated the author's use of ejaculation. I hated the author's diction for depicting Yorkshire accents. Like, what the f*** is this? But most of all, the story. Oh god, the story. The novel starts off with Mr. Lockwood getting lost and seeking shelter in Wuthering Heights, where he meets Heathcliff and almost gets assaulted by his dog. After meeting some characters like Hareton, Kathy, Zilla, and Joseph, you'll see why I give emphasis on him later, he gets sent off to sleep in a room that's usually off limits, and there he finds diary entries from Catherine Earnshaw, and some spooky shit happens where a ghost seemingly of Catherine begs to be let in. You know, normal things in this normal manner. He then does the only normal thing in this novel and gets the f*** off to Thrushcross Grange, where the housekeeper Nellie Dean then tells him the story of Heathcliff and Catherine's childhood. You know, the next 27 chapters or so are like this, yeah? I want you to keep this in mind that within the context of this novel, Nellie is actually saying everything she says, and it's not just a flashback through her perspective. Heathcliff was adopted into the Earnshaw household and grew fond of his adopted sister, Catherine. Oh my god, it's the ghost girl! While getting into spats with his older brother, Hindley. Oh, but oh no. Mr. Earnshaw's getting sick and sends Hindley off to college, which conveniently lets Catherine and Heathcliff spend more time together. It was at this moment I knew this story shifted into a romance drama. God help me. When he dies, Hindley gains control of the household and basically degrades Heathcliff into a servant. And after an encounter where Catherine gets bit by a dog and is chastised for her behavior by the Lintons, oh, we'll get to them soon, he forbids Heathcliff from seeing Catherine. No! Then she comes back after a break at Thrushcross and seems to be treating him like a servant too. And the next 10 or so chapters basically revolve around these two basically failing to communicate with each other and gradually making their relationship worse until Catherine basically ditches Heathcliff for Edgar Linton, which causes Heathcliff to do the most normal thing and marry his sister Isabella out of spite. Is this what you f***ing people are into? So, flash forward several years, Catherine and Edgar plan to have a kid called Catherine. I'm calling you Kathy. Heathcliff starts ruling over the Heights and has a servant who's basically like the next generation version of him, called Hareton, and their relationship in this story is basically,
Miss, I want to be a doctor when I grow up.
Did I just catch you wanting to be
Oh, sweet Jesus! Lord have mercy!
get it? It's meant to be ironic, because, like, Heathcliff was also forced to be a servant, and here he is treating his basically foster son even worse. And Isabella just ghosts everyone, which frankly is the smartest move in this book so far. Oh yeah, also Hindley goes insane and tries to kill Heathcliff, but fails and gets sent away. But that's relatively minor at the end of the day. We need to focus on the mistakes of a faulty relationship. Catherine gradually gets more and more sick, and in adulthood she's bedridden on the brink of death. And after all of these years, Heathcliff finally sees her again, albeit with threatening to detain Nellie and forcing his way into the Grange and doing some frankly weird shit. And after all of this time, even though they're married off to separate people, Catherine still wants to be with him. So what does Heathcliff do? He victim blames her for hurting herself until she basically collapses and dies after giving birth to Kathy. Skip more in the timeline and Isabella dies with her child, Linton. Okay, hell. Yeah, sure, why not? Name your kid after your maiden name. That's not confusing at all. Power is fully given to Heathcliff, and while technically Hareton is supposed to be the one inheriting the Heights, Heathcliff refuses and keeps him as a servant. You get the irony? But more importantly, Kathy is now a teenager, and she lives a relatively happy life. Edgar refuses her to leave the Grange, which honestly, it's fair. He knows what's out there. But whoops, when Isabella died, Edgar wanted to get Linton, which conveniently allows Kathy to escape in the Grange and find Wuthering Heights. Later, she meets Linton, who's innately snobbish and frail, but don't worry, he gets swooped easily by Heathcliff, in order to inherit the Grange too and fully take everything from Edgar. After some years, Kathy and Nellie, don't question why she's here, venture into the Heights again and again to basically be trapped inside with Heathcliff, hoping for Kathy and Linton to marry so he assumes full control of both houses. And just to add insult to injury, throughout all of this, Edgar's health is declining too, and eventually dies when they get captured. That's like 4 people who died of long-standing ailments. All things seem to be lost, but after several weeks, Harrington and Kathy start getting along again, and it all culminates into an encounter with Heathcliff where he's basically like, reconciliation? After an argument? That's not like me and Catherine. He dies after this, by the way. So the story ends with Lockwood deciding to leave the manor and seeing people who talk about 2 mysterious ghosts being sighted. Oh? I'm sorry, did you forget the whole book was a flashback? Yeah, me too, let's go. So, that was the book. What the hell was this? Can I just say, there was no reason for this story to be a flashback. Here's the thing I was telling you to keep an eye on. Technically, because everything Nellie is talking about is being said, everything's in quotation marks. But that also includes other characters' dialogues, the letters being written and said, and Joseph. Joseph. See, Joseph has an accent. And while I've previously talked about how nauseating reading the book is with this, you'd think that it'd be more understandable now that his dialogue is being said through another character. No, actually, this quote is from chapter 10, after Nellie starts monologuing. Oh my god. Nah, it gets better. See, Linton sent off to the Heights because Joseph sent a letter demanding him to. And even though this is a written letter, meaning that there is no need for his dialogue to be used, the letter is written with a Yorkshire accent. So let me get this straight. At this moment, the perspective is currently from Joseph reading his own letter, as someone else reads his letter, as them reading is being described by another character to another character. Right. That and many other nitpicks and gripes I have with this book personally make me dislike it. And hey, it was surely iconic. I mean, I understood it and didn't use spark notes like the rest of my group. Yeah, that's right, I'm calling you out, bitch.